What if Atlantis was real, but not lost beneath the ocean? What if it wasn't one city, but an entire world erased from history? Ancient civilizations across the globe tell the same story: a golden age, a great flood, and knowledge that survived. Tonight, we're not searching for Atlantis on a map. We're searching for it in memory. Atlantis enters our world through a single source, the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. For centuries, scholars have dismissed Atlantis as nothing more than a philosophical metaphor, a fictional story designed to teach moral lessons about pride, power, and collapse. But that interpretation rests on a dangerous assumption that Plato invented the story. Plato himself never claimed that. In his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, Plato clearly states that the story of Atlantis was told to the Athenian lawmaker Solon by Egyptian priests at the temple of Sias. These priests insisted that their records were far older than Greek civilization and that Greece had forgotten much of its early history due to repeated catastrophes. One line stands out above all others. "You Greeks are always children. There is no such thing as an old Greek." This wasn't poetry, it was an accusation. The Egyptians claimed that civilizations had risen and fallen many times before recorded history. Atlantis, according to them, existed 9,000 years before Solon, placing it around 11,600 years ago, a time period that modern history claims humans were incapable of building anything complex. Plato describes Atlantis with striking detail: concentric rings of land and water, advanced engineering, organized governance, powerful navies, and immense wealth derived from both natural resources and human knowledge. These are not the vague descriptions of a myth. They read like a remembered place. Critics argue Plato used Atlantis symbolically, but Plato never treated other fictional stories this way. He clearly labeled myths as myths elsewhere. Atlantis is different. It is presented as historical tradition preserved through generations. So, before asking where Atlantis was, we must ask a more important question. Why were ancient civilizations so confident that something like Atlantis once existed, long before history officially began? Around 11,600 years ago, the Earth experienced one of the most violent and sudden climate events in human history. Scientists call it the Younger Dryas, but ancient cultures remembered it very differently. Global temperatures dropped rapidly. Ice sheets melted almost overnight. Sea levels rose by hundreds of feet. Entire coastlines disappeared beneath the ocean. What today would be called an extinction-level event unfolded in a geological instant. If a civilization had existed near the oceans, and most advanced civilizations do, it would have been erased almost completely. Modern archaeology insists that humans at this time were scattered hunter-gatherers, incapable of large-scale construction or advanced planning. But that narrative collapses when confronted with sites like Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey. Göbekli Tepe is over 12,000 years old. It features massive stone pillars weighing up to 20 tons, carved with precise animal reliefs and arranged in complex geometric patterns. There are no signs of permanent housing, agriculture, or metal tools. Yet the site required extraordinary planning, coordination, and engineering knowledge. This should not exist, according to mainstream history. Göbekli Tepe wasn't built by primitive people experimenting with civilization. It looks more like something built by survivors, people who already knew what they were doing. Even more telling is what happened next. After Göbekli Tepe, human civilization seems to reset. Agriculture appears suddenly. Monumental architecture reemerges thousands of years later. It's as if knowledge was intentionally buried, both physically and culturally. The Younger Dryas may not have ended civilization. It may have ended memory. And Atlantis may have been one of its greatest casualties. One of the greatest mistakes in the search for Atlantis is the assumption that it was a single island, a lone city swallowed by the sea. But Plato never described Atlantis as merely a city. He described it as an empire, a vast maritime power with influence stretching across regions. Empires do not exist in isolation. What if Atlantis wasn't confined to one location, but represented a global civilization, one that thrived along coastlines during the last ice age? When sea levels rose after the Younger Dryas, more than 90% of the world's ancient shorelines were submerged. Any coastal cities, ports, or trade hubs would now lie deep underwater, invisible to traditional archaeology. This possibility explains something extraordinary: the striking similarities between ancient cultures that supposedly developed independently. Flood myths appear across the globe, in Sumer, India, China, the Americas, and among indigenous traditions worldwide. These myths are not vague. They describe advanced worlds destroyed by water, followed by survivors who carried knowledge forward. Why would cultures separated by oceans remember the same memory? The answer may be simple. They inherited the same memory. If Atlantis was a pre-Ice Age civilization with global reach, its collapse would fragment humanity. Isolated survivor groups would pass down distorted memories, myths, legends, symbols of a lost golden age. Atlantis wouldn't be found in one place. It would be found everywhere, in architectural echoes, in shared symbols, in stories humanity refuses to forget. Atlantis may not be lost. It may be scattered. When people imagine advanced civilizations, they imagine machines, metal, engines, electricity, but that assumption may be limiting our understanding of the past. Advanced does not always mean industrial. What if Atlantis followed a different technological path, one based on geometry, sound, and natural forces rather than machinery? Ancient sites across the world share uncanny similarities. Sacred geometry appears in Egypt, Mesoamerica, India, and Southeast Asia. Structures are aligned to solstices, equinoxes, and star systems. Many exhibit strange acoustic properties where sound behaves unnaturally. Some stones appear cut with precision that modern tools struggle to replicate. These were not random achievements. They suggest a lost understanding of vibrational physics, earth energies, harmonic resonance, a technology rooted in knowledge, not consumption. Atlantis may not have polluted its world. It may have cooperated with it. Stone, sound, and mathematics may have been enough. If such a civilization collapsed, later humans, lacking context, would mistake its remains for religious monuments or ceremonial sites, never realizing they were fragments of a once unified system. The absence of machines does not mean the absence of intelligence. It may mean we are looking for the wrong evidence. Plato tells us Atlantis was destroyed in a single catastrophic event, but destruction does not always mean total annihilation. Some would have survived, and survivors carry memory. Across the ancient world, civilizations emerge suddenly with advanced knowledge. Astronomy, agriculture, architecture, and writing appear almost fully formed, with no clear developmental stages. Ancient myths speak of teachers, beings who arrived after a great flood and taught humanity how to rebuild. They were remembered as gods, not because they claimed divinity, but because they possessed knowledge that others had lost. In Sumer, they were called the Anunnaki. In Egypt, the Shemsu Hor. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent. They're described as civilizers, not creators. What if these were survivors of Atlantis or a similar lost civilization trying to preserve fragments of knowledge in a shattered world? Over generations, memory becomes legend. Teachers become gods. History becomes myth. But myth often begins with truth. The survivors didn't rule forever. Their knowledge diluted. Humanity rebuilt from fragments, unaware that it was walking in the shadow of something far older. Atlantis didn't vanish. It lived on, imperfectly, through us. If Atlantis truly existed, then modern history faces a crisis. It would mean civilization did not begin 6,000 years ago. It would mean humanity has risen and fallen before. It would mean progress is not guaranteed. Such an idea destabilizes everything. Academic systems rely on linear timelines. Governments rely on the belief that modern civilization represents the peak of human achievement. Atlantis challenges that comfort. A forgotten advanced civilization suggests fragility. It suggests that collapse is not an exception, but a cycle. So Atlantis becomes myth, allegory, fantasy, not because it lacks evidence, but because its implications are inconvenient. Acknowledging Atlantis means acknowledging that we are not unique, not invincible, and not permanent. And that may be the most dangerous idea of all. Atlantis may not lie beneath the ocean as a single intact ruin waiting to be discovered by submarines or satellites. It may not appear on any map, no matter how ancient. Instead, Atlantis may exist in fragments, scattered across the world, hidden in stone, preserved in myth, and carried quietly in human memory. Every ancient monument raises the same silent question: who taught the builders? From the precision of the Great Pyramid to the impossible stonework of Machu Picchu, from the astronomical alignments of Stonehenge to the submerged structures off distant coastlines, humanity keeps encountering evidence that suggests knowledge far older than the civilizations officially credited with creating it. These structures feel less like beginnings and more like echoes. Then there are the stories. Flood myths appear everywhere. Cultures separated by oceans, continents, and millennia all speak of a lost golden age, a great catastrophe, and a world reborn from ruins. These myths are not identical, but they share a common emotional core: warning, loss, and remembrance. It is as if humanity is trying to tell itself something it refuses to fully hear. Atlantis may not have been a place you could visit. It may have been a stage in human development, a level of understanding we once reached and then lost, a civilization that mastered its environment only to be undone by forces greater than itself. And perhaps that is why Atlantis matters. Not because we want to find its ruins, but because we are repeating its story. We build higher, we move faster, we believe we are permanent. Atlantis reminds us that no civilization is immune to collapse, no matter how advanced it becomes. Knowledge can disappear, memory can fade, history can be rewritten by catastrophe. If Atlantis was real, then history is not a straight line, it is a cycle. And if history is incomplete, then the future is not fixed. Atlantis may still be here, not beneath the sea, but as a warning written into the past, waiting for us to finally understand it. because the most important question is no longer whether Atlantis existed, it is whether we are becoming it.
So the question is no longer, was Atlantis real? The real question is, what else have we forgotten? Because if Atlantis fell once, it can happen again.